Okay, I know what you're thinking. Shouldn't a video telling you about all the movies that are coming out this year come out earlier than February? And look, yeah, you're probably right, okay? But this is when I made it, so shut up and deal with it. First up is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, reboot, or requel, as per what Scream 5 kind of coined these types of movies to be called. This movie is definitely something that I'm sort of excited about. It's set to come out this month, which is exciting. But the one thing putting me off is that it's getting sent straight to Netflix. You know, there's not going to be a theatrical release. That's pretty disappointing. Also, just by the way, this movie is going to be a direct sequel to the original, much like what 2018 Halloween did with that franchise, where it ignored everything that came after the original. That's what this one is doing too. It's kind of a popular trend in horror, and that's kind of interesting. So yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm but excited. Then next up, speaking of Halloween, is Halloween Ends, directed by David Gordon Green, who did the two films before this one. And look, I don't know, man, is this one gonna save the trilogy? Maybe, I hope so, but I'm not sure I have high hopes for it anymore. This one, if it's not obvious, is coming out in October 14 to be specific. Then next up is Final Destination 6. This is written by the writers of Ready or Not and Scream 5, so that's definitely a good indication. Look, this is probably gonna be cheesy and whatever, but I'm all in for this. This is gonna be sick, I'm gonna love it. It's gonna be a masterpiece. Next up is Wolf Creek 3, and it's hell fucking yeah. Coming back once again to terrorize the outback, Mick Taylor preys upon an American family that takes a trip to his Australian turf. A hellish nightmare ensues as the two children of the family escape, but are then hunted down by the infamous killer. And I don't know what kind of tone this one's gonna take. More like a silly approach like the second one did, or more of that grounded, grisly original version. I don't know, but I'm keen to see it. And then the last little obvious horror reboot remake thing that I'm doing here is Evil Dead Rise, which I guess is a reboot of the Evil Dead franchise, but it does have Bruce Campbell involved, just by the way. He's not actually going to be in it, so the character of Ash isn't going to actually appear in this film, but Bruce Campbell being involved in some way, just in a producer role or whatever, that's kind of a good indication that this could be good. I don't know, I'm kind of interested to see where that's going to go. Okay, now we're going to get to the actual original films that are coming out this year, the stuff you might not have heard of, and the real focus that I want to get into on this video. This is the stuff that I really want to talk about, giving you an indication of some movies that, oh, maybe you haven't heard of those, maybe you're going to add them to a list and all that kind of stuff, you know? That's kind of the point. So, the first one I want to talk about is called Emergency. This is directed by Carey Williams, who I'm not familiar with, and it stars RJ Kyler, who is the guy from Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, and also this really great drama series about comedians called I'm Dying Up Here. I really like that actor. Anyway, the plot reads, ready for a night of legendary partying, 3 college students must weigh the pros and cons of calling the police when faced with an unexpected situation. And that just sounds right up my alley, to be honest. I imagine, if I had to take a guess, they probably run somebody over. There's this one image where they're in a car and they look shocked. I imagine they're going to be drunk, they're going to run somebody over. It's going to be a whole I know we did last summer situation, but it seems like this movie is going to take itself a lot more seriously, and it's going to be all about the morals of what they do and the consequences that lead from there. That sort of thing just really interests me, so it sounds good to me. This is set to release on May 27th. Next up is a movie called Speak No Evil, which sounds really weird and unique, and I'm super into the idea. This is a Danish film about a family who is on holiday and meets another family, and then agrees to spend a weekend with them, at their house and whatever. And then when things start to unravel between these two families and the bubbles start to rise and everything, and the family whose house it is starts to show that they're maybe not as pleasant as they first seemed, the family who is visiting has to kind of keep up appearances and look like they're being polite and all that kind of stuff, as to not escalate the situation. And that just sounds really intriguing to me. It's kind of a vague idea at the moment, but that sounds awesome to me. This is set to release on March 17th. Then, next up is a really weird movie that I don't know what to make of this one, but it is called Bring It On Halloween. This is a part of the Bring It On franchise, the Bring It On cinematic universe, which is about cheerleading, mostly from the early 2000s. It was direct-to-DVD stuff, if you haven't heard of it. Not fantastic films, critically or anything, but this movie... This movie is a sequel to this franchise, Bring It On, right? Which is like I said, a franchise about cheerleaders, but it's also a slasher movie, and it's produced by the Sci-Fi Channel. And honestly, that sounds kind of fucking fantastic to me. I don't really know what the hell they're going for here, but it definitely sounds like it's going to be like kind of funny, self-aware, and all that kind of stuff. It just sounds ridiculous. I don't know. It kind of sounds like everything I want, to be honest. Then next up is a movie called Crawl Space, directed by L. Gustavo Cooper, who I'm not familiar with. But this movie also stars Henry Thomas, who is the younger version of the dad in The Haunting of Hill House. And I like that guy, so that gets me a bit interested. And the premise reads, this movie explores the nature of human beings when pushed to the edge. And look, that's super vague, I know, but I don't know. If they're focusing, again, much like the other one, Emergency, if they're focusing on the morals of what humans do in desperate situations and all that kind of stuff, that sounds like my kind of thing. This is set to be released on March 31. Then next up is my most anticipated movie of the year by far, Nope. This is Jordan Peele's next movie, and it stars Daniel Kaluuya from Get Out and Stephen Yeun, who is Glenn from The Walking Dead. Now, the plot with this, absolutely unknown. Nobody knows a thing about this, apart from one image with like clouds and lightning, but it's like on a rope or something like that. I don't know. I'm not looking at it at this very moment, but it looks kind of interesting. I'm not exactly sure what the hell it's going to be. This is presumably a horror movie, and you know, with Jordan Peele's track record, this is going to be a fantastic film. Like, I'm going to have such a party on July 22 when this is set to be released by seeing this movie. I'm so excited to see Nope. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. I have no doubts about that. Just with, you know, with Jordan Peele, I have no doubts about it. This is going to be a fantastic film. Then next up is Slayers, starring Abigail Breslin and Thomas Jane, and this sounds like absolute fucking nonsense if I'm being honest, but it might be. I might just be all in. As the premise reads, a group of superstar influencers are drawn to a reclusive billionaire's mansion only to find themselves trapped in the lair of an evil vampire. The only way out is to be saved by a famous online gamer and an old school vampire hunter. I don't know. That sounds like it could go either way. It sounds like it could just be stupid, or it sounds like it could be really fun and like kind of self-aware of what it's doing. I don't know. If it does like what was that movie called with Vin Diesel and he was a vampire hunter and it took itself super seriously and all this stuff. If it does that, I don't know. I don't know if I'm into it. But if it's more like a freaky or something like that, this could be fun. This sounds like it could be fun. Next up is one called You Won't Be Alone, starring Noomi Rapace, who was the woman from Lamb and the Trip. And this is an actor I've got my eye out for because she seems pretty awesome from the two films I've seen her so far in. This is a horror movie about a young girl who has been kidnapped in the 19th century and transformed into a witch. And in this one, I'm thinking that it's going to be more along the lines of something like Saint Maud, or probably more closely Robert Eggers's The Witch. I definitely think it's going to be more like art housey type of horror movie like that. I think it has the potential to be very good, but it definitely won't be up everybody's alley. I don't think it's just going to be like cheap thrills. I think there's going to be a deep message in here, and I'm pretty interested in that. This is expected to be released on the 1st of April. April Fool's Day! On April Fool's Day, you won't be alone! That should be the tagline. Is that on the poster? I should get into marketing, right? Anyway, next up is a movie called Fugued Up. I'm unfamiliar with the director or stars or anything, but the plot gets me all in. This is a dark comedy telling the tale of a man who wakes up from a coma with no memory, learning he may be a serial killer, as he pieces his life back together one hysterical step at a time. That just sounds kind of fun to me. It sounds like maybe like The Voices with Ryan Reynolds, if you've ever heard of that movie. Yeah, I don't know. Sounds interesting. This seems like one of those movies that is going to be really hard to find though, and there might not be many sessions of it, or if it goes straight to streaming, it might be hard to find. I have a feeling about that with this movie. This is set to be released on the 24th of February in America. Anyway, that's what IMDb told me. I don't know about anywhere else. So thanks a lot, IMDb. Just tell me the one country. That's all it. Come on, like, that's all that matters? What about Australia? I would like to know. Anyway, but that's all I know at the moment. Then is a movie called Fresh, which stars Sebastian Stan as kind of a creep in some sort of way. We're not exactly sure how, but the plot describes this as being a thriller that explores the horrors of modern dating through a woman's battle to survive her new boyfriend's unusual appetite. Whatever the hell that means. Does that mean he's a cannibal? Does that mean he's a vampire? I kind of hope not, but I think so. I think maybe this is going to be a Sebastian Stan vampire movie. I don't know, but the whole line about modern dating and stuff kind of makes it sound like this is going to be sort of a satirical take on that. It might have kind of a modern edge to it that might get me pretty pumped for this movie. I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure. This is expected to be released in early March. Then next up is a movie called Shut In. This is about a young mother who is barricaded by her violent ex-boyfriend who must use ingenuity to protect her small children from escalating danger as they try to escape. This sounds like it could be intriguing, and it could be kind of like a new addition to like what Lee Winnell did with The Invisible Man, as it like, you know, does social commentary on trauma and abuse and all that kind of stuff. Or yeah, it could be kind of dumb, I'm not really sure. But the premise does intrigue me enough, and I'm going to keep my eye out on this. I think it sounds like it could be good. And yet again, another movie about a woman stuck in some sort of inconvenient situation. Comes another movie called Bed Rest, about a pregnant woman who is on bed rest, and so obviously can't go anywhere, and then starts to get haunted with no escape. But yeah, it may all be happening in her head and all that kind of stuff. This sounds like it could be very much like Gerald's Game, which is a very good movie. If it's anything like that, I'm pretty pumped for this one. I think it could be good. Look, it's vague at the moment. We don't have too much to go off, but sounds like it has potential at least. Next up is A24 bringing a new horror film, and it is called X. Man, I'm excited for X. This is a movie about a group of people who visit a secluded farmhouse with the intentions of shooting an adult film, but obviously shit gets interrupted and they don't do that, and stuff goes in a horrific way instead. This stars Brittany Snow and Jenna Ortega from Scream and the very Scream 5, sorry, and the very fantastic recent film called The Fallout. I'm very interested in this one. The trailer just looks good. I'm into this one. I have a really good feeling about it. Then is a movie called Unwelcome, and this is a horror movie that apparently isn't labeled as a comedy or anything anywhere on the internet. It's just a horror, and it's about evil goblins. And that's kind of all I need to know that this is a must watch. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this could be completely stupid, but maybe completely stupid in a good way. Then next, from the writers of A Quiet Place comes a movie called 65. Described as a sci-fi thriller starring Adam Driver, the plot reads vague as an astronaut crash lands on a mysterious planet only to discover that he's not alone. Ooh, and look, that might veer off into more of the action genre and everything, more so than being a horror or a thriller. But that line of like, he's not alone, I don't know, that kind of gives me vibes that it could have horror themes in there. I'm not exactly sure. Sounds like it has huge potential though. Adam Driver's awesome. I think this could be good. Then next up is The Black Phone, directed by Scott Derrickson, who did Sinister and Doctor Strange. This stars Ethan Hawke, and the plot reads, after being abducted by a killer and locked in a basement, a boy starts receiving calls from the killer's previous victims. So he's like, I don't know, he's stuck underground and whatever, and he's getting phone calls from ghosts and stuff. That sounds like it could be a good little creepy film. This is set to be released on January 27. That's what I've written down, but I don't think that's right. This is coming out in like June or something. Next up is a movie called Don't Worry Darling, directed by Olivia Wilde, who did Booksmart. This is labelled as a crime/horror starring Florence Pugh. Hell yeah. Also Harry Styles, who I guess is an actor now. I don't know. The plot reads, a 1950s housewife living with her husband in a utopian experimental community begins to worry that his glamorous company may be hiding disturbing secrets. And that just sounds really, really intriguing. I don't know, the whole like fake utopia type of thing that's actually a dystopia kind of place and everything. That interests me. The fake like 1950s style and everything. I just like the sound of that. It's gonna be like Fallout or something. I like the aesthetic that this sounds like it's gonna be. I'm really interested in this one. This is set to be released on September 23. Then next up is a movie called, and this looks fucking creepy as hell, We're All Going to the World's Fair. This looks really interesting and really unique, but it does look like one that could easily go off the rails if not handled well. Still, I'm interested, as the movie tells the story of a teenager who begins to get entranced by an online role-playing game, akin to real-life ones where people have literally been convinced somehow to like commit suicide. It's these real cults that apparently happen online and get vulnerable people sucked into doing things that they probably shouldn't. And this movie will be an exploration on how these online cults groom their victims. That just sounds really, really intriguing to me. The one thing putting me off of this is that it's kind of like a found footage thing, but this looks like one of those types of movies that actually might like have a reason to be, you know, it might justify having that kind of look to it. And yeah, I'm really pretty interested in this one. I think that if this sounds interesting to you, that you should check it out, because because it definitely looks like a very low budget sort of small film that could probably use the support. Then next up, and I'm not sure how much of a horror this is if I'm being honest, but it definitely sounds like it has dark themes to it. It is called Crimes of the Future. This is directed by David Cronenberg, who did The Fly, and it's described as a sci-fi slash body horror, which I guess isn't that much of a surprise. That's very much what he does, so yeah. Also, this is apparently a remake of a movie directed by the same guy with the same name that came out in 1970, but it looks completely different and sounds different. I don't know. I've never heard of that movie, so I'm not exactly sure. But this one though, this remake or this original, whatever the hell this movie is that's coming out, stars Viggo Mortensen and Kristen Stewart. And the plot revolves around a synthetical evolution of the human body that makes people reach beyond their natural state. But as society adapts to it, issues arise when people in power try to police this science fiction-based evolution. All the while, instances of accelerated evolution syndrome begin to spread. While this world-building stuff is happening, the film is about somebody named Saul Tenser, who works as a performance artist doing daring stunts in front of his audiences. Here, he takes advantage and plays around with fake organs in some sort of way, sprouting unexpected organs in the body and removing them, I'm assuming, in horrifically violent ways. I'm not really sure. I don't really get what this is. Like, there's a lot of detail here. There's a lot of like, there's a big premise here, but it's also vague somehow at the same time. There's a lot there, but also it doesn't say much. I don't know. I don't super get what this is, but it sounds interesting. It sounds like it's going to deal with, I don't know, identity maybe. It sounds like it's going to deal with like, I don't know, some horrific stuff. Potentially. Sounds interesting, but maybe confusing. This is set to be released in June 2022, but that may not be the case anymore because I haven't heard much about this, so if it gets delayed, that's not going to be a huge surprise to me. But I don't know. Sounds like it has potential to me. Then next up is a movie called Alone with You, which is about a woman who prepares a romantic homecoming for her girlfriend. But as she does so, she begins to become excruciatingly lonely. And what follows are voices, shadows, and hallucinations around her apartment as she waits for her partner's arrival. And so this kind of looks like it's definitely going to be kind of like, you know, artsy-fartsy or whatever. It looks like it's going to kind of be a mindfuck. She's not sure what's going to be real, what's not going to be real, and all that kind of stuff. And it definitely seems like one of those movies that is going to be very like metaphorical and really has this deep theme in there. And I'm pretty damn interested to find out what that is. I will say though that somehow some people have seen this. I guess it's been at festivals or whatever. I don't know. And with 51 reviews at the moment on IMDb, it sits at only a 6.2, which isn't a great sign. That's a pretty low score, specifically for a brand new film. You know, usually on IMDb, things get a higher score and then they, you know, slowly trickle down as they kind of get out of the main big popularity of their first release and everything. But I guess we'll see in September when this is set to come out. I don't know. Then next up is a movie called The Ledge, which stars no one I know, and I'm not familiar with the writer or director, but I'm pretty interested in what seems like another low-budget thriller about a mountain climber who gets trapped on a literal ledge, like on a mountain, and is hanging for her life as she fights off 4 killers who are standing above her at the top. I don't really understand how this is going to be like a full theatrical release and everything. It sounds like it's gonna end pretty quickly. Like, how does that situation kind of like keep going? I don't know, but I'm interested to find out. Just sounds like it would be like an intense kind of fun thriller type of movie. That's cool. I like those. Then next up is a movie, I think, called Clown Apocalypse. This is set to be a 360-degree horror project that will include a film, a video game, and a live event, all directed by Eli Roth. I don't really get what this is. He has described it as, this will be a big, fun, scary event, and I don't know. It sounds like it's going to be weird. It looks like it's kind of a horror comedy, at least the movie part. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck this is, but I thought I should mention it because it sounds ambitious. It sounds interesting. Then next up is a movie called Detained. I'm unfamiliar with the director or the stars, but this is a thriller based in a police station where a woman wakes up in an interrogation room with no memory of how she got there. And the synopsis from there then describes that something is not quite right. So I'm guessing that this is going to delve into the horror genre and get a little bit supernatural. And that sounds like it could be fun. I don't know. Unsure of the release date at the moment. Just by the way though, it is currently in post-production. Then next up is a movie that hasn't quite been confirmed just yet, but apparently a lot of the major studios are kind of at a bidding war at the very moment, all wanting to be a part of it, which is a great sign. This is currently called Falling at 35,000 Feet, which is a book that my wife actually told me about that's called something else. I think it's just called Falling or something. There is no director attached at the moment, but yeah, kind of everybody wants a piece of this pie at the moment, and it sounds really interesting based on what the novel is about. So I will read what the novel is about rather than the film, since that's pretty much non-existent at this very moment. But hey, it could come out this year. I don't know. I'll read the synopsis now. You just boarded a flight to New York. There are 143 other passengers on board. What you don't know is that 30 minutes before the flight, your pilot's family was kidnapped. For his family to live, everyone on your plane must die. The only way the family will survive is if the pilot follows his orders and crashes the plane. Enjoy the flight. And that just kind of sounds great, as it's kind of going to delve into the like morality of what the hell this pilot should do. You know, does he care more about all of the strangers and his reputation and everything, or more about his family? You know, that's a hard decision to make and everything. Sounds awesome. But yeah, I'm really unsure of the release date here. I maybe shouldn't have even mentioned it, because I doubt this is going to be a 2022 film, to be honest. I think it's definitely going to be more of a 2023 movie. But hey, it was listed on the websites and stuff I was looking at, and it sounded really interesting, so I wanted to talk about it. Then next up is a movie called Megan, but the E is a 3. This is from the writer of *Malignant*, which gives me huge hopes because I fucking love that movie. And it's described as a horror thriller produced by Blumhouse, which I know Blumhouse like flacks a lot of shit from a lot of people, but I love Blumhouse. Whatever, I don't care what you say. And the plot describes a robotics engineer at a toy company builds a lifelike doll that begins to take on a life of its own. So I guess it's kind of like a Chucky or an Annabelle or whatever, but this looks more like it's like a cyber focus or whatever. It's like more of a robot, you know, more so than just like a haunted doll, you know, AI and all that kind of stuff. It looks like it could be cheesy. It looks like it could be fun in that kind of way. I don't know. Just the writer of *Malignant*, that gets me all in, so yeah. I'm unsure of the release date here, though. Next up is a movie called Time Cut, and we know absolutely nothing about the plot or anything about this, but it is from the writer of *Freaky*, and that's it. That's all I need to be convinced. It sounds like it's probably going to be some sort of time travel horror comedy type of thing, written by the dude that did *Freaky*, and I'm like, give me that, please. I'll buy a ticket right fucking now. No plot details needed. Nothing. I don't need anything else. I'm already convinced you've sold this on me. Then next up is a movie called The Outfit, and this is definitely leaning more on the thriller side than the horror, and it's set to release in March. This stars Mark Rylance, Zoe Deutch, and Dylan O'Brien, and it's about an expert tailor who must outwit a dangerous group of mobsters in order to survive a fateful night. And it looks like it's all going to be set just in like this one building, and kind of like a fight for your life sort of thing. And I don't know, I like those sorts of things where it's set in one place and it's all kind of like real time, not quite real time, but like, you know, just set over the course of one night. I love that sort of thing. And yeah, this just looks like it has a lot of energy to it. I think it's going to be pretty cool. Next up is a movie that is really not at all confirmed at all, but there are details about it that looks like this could be possible, so I'm going to say it all anyway. This is a movie that is set to be directed by Edgar Wright, and it is a film called The Chain, based on a 2019 novel written by Adrian McKinty about a literal chain of kidnappings where the parents of the last kidnapped victims are instructed to play a ransom and kidnap further children to get their own back. The morality behind the actions of what to do, whether or not to break this chain, sounds like a tough one to make. Obviously, nobody would be willing to just let their child, you know, go and not try and get it back. And so what you're willing to do to get your child back and deem your child more important than like anyone else, and, you know, kind of commit these horrible acts yourself and continue this chain, that sounds like an interesting kind of moral mindfuck right there. Where like, what is the right thing to do there? There is no right option. It's like, you kind of have to participate if you want to get your kid back and implicate yourself in this horrible crime. You know, it's tough. I'm sure this delves further into darker themes and everything than just this premise alone, but it sounds really interesting, and yeah, just based on that, I'm interested. I'm unsure of the release date here. Again, I feel like, you know, this hasn't even started filming or anything. This has nobody attached to it just yet. This is more likely gonna be at least a 2023 film. I don't know, but I thought I should mention it because it sounds really good, and if it does come out, like, hell yeah, who told you about it? Me. Then next up, and this is the last of the horror/thriller movies, it's called The Hills Have Eyes for You, and it's described as a horror rom-com directed by Eli Craig, who did Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. So you know this has huge potential to be a great horror comedy. This is going to be produced by Netflix, and it's described as a unique underdog love story with genre-bending scares, and a lot of laughs. And it's a fresh take and fun love story set against the backdrop of an elevated horror/comedy. And I don't know, man. I'm just all in for this. That sounds fun. I'm unsure of the release date at the moment. Okay, next up are the non-horror movies. And starting off, again, I'm going to go through the obvious ones, the sequels and reboots and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to get through these ones quick till we get to the real meat of this and talk about the original films. So first up is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, directed by Sam Raimi. He's back. Stars Benedict Cumberbatch, obviously Elizabeth Olsen, which could be awesome because she's going to be Wanda and potentially a villain. I don't know. I don't want to talk too much about it because everyone's going to be talking about Doctor Strange. Who cares? Let's get to the original stuff. This is set to be released on May 5. Then next up is Thor: Love and Thunder, directed by Taika Waititi. Yeah, I'm excited. This is set to be released July 8th. Then there's Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever, directed by Ryan Coogler, supposedly coming out on November 11. I don't believe this at all. With the controversy behind Letitia Wright and also the whole, Black Panther legacy with Chadwick Boseman's death that happened, unfortunately, was that last year or the year before? It just seems like there's going to be a lot of problems to get through with this film. I don't really see how it's going to look. I don't really get what this movie is going to be. And at the moment, it looks impossible. But, this is the MCU. It's Marvel. They've got fuck you money. They can do pretty much anything. I figure if anyone can work their way around this sort of thing and this challenge, it's going to be the MCU. So, yeah, I'm really curious to see what they make of this film. And they do still have a lot of good, bits and pieces to work with here. They've got Wakanda, they've got all the side characters from the original film. It still has potential to be good, but at the moment, I don't have great feelings about it. I don't know. Then next up is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2 Part 1, written by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and this is about Miles Morales teaming up with Gwen Stacy and other multiverse spider characters, set to be released October 7. It's going to be great. That just without a doubt, we already know this is going to be great. Then next up is Morbius, which I couldn't really give a fuck about if I'm being honest. Then there's The Batman, which everyone's excited for, directed by Matt Reeves, who did Dawn and War of the Planet of the Apes. This stars Robert Pattinson, as we all fucking know, and he's going to be a great Batman. I fucking know it. The only thing putting me off about this is that it's going to go for 3 hours, reportedly, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that, man. No movie needs to be 3 hours. I know all the fanboys are probably like, yeah, cool, the longer the better, but I'm like, come on. Like, Endgame? Look, Endgame was 3 hours, but that was like the big climactic finale and everything. That earned its way there. This is the first of this iteration of Batman. Does it really need to be 3 hours long? I don't know, but it does look like it's going to be good. The poster's beautiful. The trailers look good. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. I really need to stop complaining about the length. And yeah, it's going to be good. Whatever. This is set to be released on March the 3rd. Then there's Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, directed by James Wan. I'm sure he'll kind of like save this film. I like the original Aquaman. It's fun. It's silly. I don't know. It should be alright. Then there's The Flash, which has Michael Keaton's Batman back in it and all that stuff, directed by Andres Muschietti, who did It and It Chapter 2, and written by Christina Hodson, who did Birds of Prey. Could be good, I guess. I don't know. I'm not that excited for it, but it should be okay. Then there's Jurassic World Dominion, directed by Colin Trevorrow, who has had a spotty career so far, He did Safety Not Guaranteed, which everyone loved. Then he got to do Jurassic World. And then he got fired from Rise of Skywalker. And then he did Book of Henry, which everybody hated. And his reputation kind of got squandered a little bit. And now he's making a comeback with this movie. Hopefully he can kind of redeem himself. I'm sort of interested, but I don't have huge stakes in the Jurassic World franchise. I don't really care all that much, if I'm being honest. This obviously stars Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard, all that stuff. Plot's unknown. I don't know. It should be fine, I guess. Whatever. This is coming out June 9. Now let's get to the non-horror underdogs. The stuff you might not have heard of. The stuff I really want to be talking about, rather than the obvious shit everyone else is going to be talking about. So, first up is one called 13 Lives, directed by Ron Howard. This is a biopic and comes from the writer of Unbroken and Everest. Starring Viggo Mortensen, Colin Farrell, and Joel Edgerton. The plot is about the true story of that soccer team of boys that got stuck underground in the caves a couple years back and they all nearly drowned. You know the story, and that just sounds like it could be really interesting. Maybe a touch exploitive about that real life situation. Maybe a tad early to be coming out. I don't know, but I still feel like it's going to be a good movie. Yeah, this is coming out on April 15th. Then next up is a movie called One Way, starring Machine Gun Kelly as Freddy, a petty criminal who was on the run with a bag full of cash and coke. He's in way over his head and hurt bad with a bullet in his guts. He's running out of time. Fast! And that's all we know. That's literally all we know pretty much, apart from a couple images. But it sounds like it could be sort of like Uncut Gems, something intense like that. I'm into it. Then next up is a movie called Next Goal Wins, which will be directed by Taika Waititi. And this is about the true story of the American/Samoan soccer team, who in 2001 suffered the very worst loss in World Cup history, losing to Australia 31-0, which just sounds insane. I don't even know how that's possible. And I'm really keen to see kind of the true story behind that, how that happened to be. It sounds potentially hilarious. It sounds maybe a bit heartbreaking. It sounds really interesting. I'm really into like this story. I think it is a great one to choose to like make a film for. It's also going to have Michael Fassbender, so that's a good thing. Next up is Monsters of California, and honestly, this doesn't sound all that interesting to me just based on the premise alone. It is a sci-fi adventure about teenagers investigating paranormal events that have been covered by the government or whatever, stuff like that. Kind of sounds like a Stranger Things type of thing. But then I found out something that got me very interested in this. It is directed by Tom DeLonge, or DeLonge, I never know how to say it, the guy from Blink-182. And what the absolute fuck? What? He's the guy who sings with the really like strong accent where he says, "Where are you?" That guy. He directed a movie. That just sounds kind of cool. Just really curious to see what he came out with. I'm sure it's going to be interesting, to say the least. He's described this though as a coming-of-age film with dick jokes, which is not a surprise coming from him. He also said, it's like if Spielberg went back and made an R-rated indie. I don't know. Sounds cool. I'm unsure of the release date though. This may get delayed to next year or whatever. But yeah, another one that I thought I should mention. Then next up is Assassin Club. Veering more into the action genre, Assassin Club is about an assassin played by Henry Golding. I'm assuming he's the one who was like top billed on IMDb. Could be one of the side characters, I'm not sure. But let's assume it's him. It is about an assassin who is assigned to kill 7 people around the world, but soon finds out that those 7 people are also assassins who are also assigned to kill him first. And that just sounds fun. I don't know. Yes, it doesn't sound super original. It sounds like a lot of other types of movies and everything. It kind of sounds like The Tournament, which is this fun like fight to the death movie. But I don't know. I'm into it. Sounds like it could be good. I hope this is an R-rated or MA here in Australia rated film and not like a PG-13/M type of movie where it's kind of like watered down and stuff. I hope it's kind of like, you know, fun and bloody and stuff, but I don't know. I feel like it won't be, but we'll see. Then there is one that I'm actually surprisingly really interested in called Ambulance. This is directed by Michael Bay.
That's bad.
Which, you know, he doesn't have the best track record. There's a bit of doubt there when it comes to him, but there's definitely no doubt that this is directed by him. Because with the trailer and stuff, there's cameras swiveling around, you know, rotating around, actors intensely talking as things seamlessly swoop through like city streets and stuff. Like, there's a lot of camera stuff going on here. The cinematography looks pretty great. It's clearly a Michael Bay movie, which, you know, say what you will about him, but he does have an eye for visuals. But what does get me interested is this also stars Jake Gyllenhaal.
That's good.
He's my favorite actor. That gets me pretty all in, to be honest. Yeah. I'm intrigued. This is about 2 robbers who steal an ambulance when their planned heist goes wrong, and it looks pretty intense from that. It looks like they're going to be in like this tough spot, and I don't know. Apparently also it's a remake of a foreign film, but I've never heard of that, never seen it, but I should check that out soon, probably before I see this film. Then there's a movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once, and this looks so cool. This looks awesome. This stars Michelle Yeoh from Shang-Chi and a fave of mine from last year called Gunpowder Milkshake. And this is from the director of Swiss Army Man. This is about a woman who can explore other universes and meets all these different possible versions of who she could have been, all while trying to save the world and all that kind of shit. And I don't know, this just looks like it's going to be fun, a lot of energy to it, and yeah, I don't know. There's good people in this, you know, they've got the talent, they've got a good premise. I'm all in for this one. Then next up is See How They Run. This stars Sam Rockwell and Saoirse Ronan. I don't know, I never know how to say her name. Saoirse Ronan. This is about a film producer trying to adapt a murder mystery play into a movie. But while mid-production cast members and whatnot start getting mysteriously killed, and what follows is a Knives Out plus Orient Express-esque whodunit. That sounds fun. Then next up is Disappointment Boulevard, which is directed by Ari Aster, and it's labeled as a comedy first. That's what's listed first, and then it is listed as a drama/horror as well. This stars Joaquin Phoenix, and the plot reads a decade-spanning portrait of one of the most successful entrepreneurs of all time. And it doesn't say who this is, doesn't really say like much of anything when it comes to details, but I don't know, man. Ari Aster doing a straight-up comedy, at least somewhat of a comedy. I'm keen to see what the hell that is going to be. Unsure of the release date, but production began on June 28, 2021. Next up is The Sky is Everywhere, which is a teenage dramedy about a kid dealing with her sister's death and high school and all that shit like that too. That'll be on Apple TV, but I'm not exactly sure when, and I don't have Apple TV, so who knows if I'll end up even watching this. Next up is a movie called Daddy-O, directed by Christy Hall, who is a first-time director but is the writer of I Am Not Okay With This. This stars Dakota Johnson and Sean Penn, and the plot is about a woman who catches a taxi. And that's it. That's like literally it. The plot describes that the woman and the driver discuss important relationships in their lives. So this sounds like it's just going to be like very dialogue heavy. Sounds like it's going to be kind of like a before sunset, sunrise type of situation. Or maybe something like Locke. I don't know. Just like a very talky type of thing. It sounds like it could be cute. I don't know. It sounds alright. Then next up is a movie called Duel, which looks interesting. It's a sci-fi film exploring the idea of cloning and identity, starring Aaron Paul and Karen Gillan, and directed by the director of The Art of Self-Defense, which is a great little weird, awkward comedy movie that came out just a couple years ago. This, as of my understanding, is about a woman who ends up trying to cancel the creation of a clone of herself. Like, she goes through cloning herself, changes her mind halfway through, but in doing so, breaks some sort of futuristic law, and then is ordered by the court to duel to the death with said clone. But it's serious though. Like, me explaining it out loud like that makes it sound dumb and like it's a comedy or something. But no, this looks like it takes itself very seriously. It's hard to explain. I don't know what to expect from this, but it seems like it could be really good. A bunch of people have already seen this. I believe this has been showing at certain festivals and stuff. But hey, I haven't been to those. I don't know. I don't go to these fancy film festivals. It's not like I'm invited or whatever. But when this does come out, I'm going to be watching this because it seems cool. Anyway, next up is a movie called Cocaine Bear. Directed by Elizabeth Banks, this tells the true story of a drug smuggler who threw 30 kilos of cocaine out of a plane, only for a bear to later be found dead after eating much of it. Now known as Pablo Escobar, it's apparently a tourist attraction in the state of Georgia, USA. The film, I imagine, will focus more on the criminal story behind the people who left the drugs there and fucked everything up, primarily through a man named Andrew Thornton, who had been a former lawyer and narcotics officer who had been on this drug smuggling run, carrying enough drugs to be worth $15 million. His body was found wearing night vision goggles, a bulletproof vest, and Gucci loafers, and this guy just sounds like a complete and utter joke, to be honest. He just sounds like an idiot, and it seems like the story has potential to be hilarious. But that being said, it kind of also sounds like it's not really all that funny, because I read this story and I'm just like, I feel sad for that bear, you know, it's just out in the wild. And then it just dies because this fucking idiot was doing this bullshit. Like, that's just sad, really. This animal just died for no real reason. Doesn't sound all that funny, but if it makes fun of the criminal more so than the bear itself, this could be awesome. I'm not exactly sure what to expect from this just yet. It's very vague. There's not much info about it at the moment, but I don't know. That title got me, and I thought I should mention it because, yeah, sounds interesting at the very least. But that's it. Those are all the movies. Well, not all of them, but a bunch of the movies to look out for in this like upcoming year. And yeah, just a bunch of the ones that I read out through my research and thought sounded a bit interesting enough to talk to, give the spotlight to for a second. And hopefully, you know, I helped you out a bit, added some things to your watch list and everything to look out for. And that's it. So please now do the things, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And I'm outie. I'm gonna go now. Goodbye. Next up is Monsters of California, and honestly, this doesn't sound all that interesting to me just based on the premise alone. It is a sci-fi adventure about teenagers investigating paranormal events that have been covered by the government or whatever, stuff like that. Kind of sounds like a Stranger Things type of thing. But then I found out something that got me very interested in this. It is directed by Tom DeLonge, or DeLonge, I never know how to say it, the guy from Blink-182. And what the absolute fuck? What? He's the guy who sings with the really strong accent where he says, "Where are you?" That guy. He directed a movie. That just sounds kind of cool. Just really curious to see what he came out with. I'm sure it's going to be interesting to say the least. He's described this though as a coming of age film with dick jokes, which is not a surprise coming from him. He also said, it's like if Spielberg went back and made an R-rated indie. I don't know. Sounds cool. I'm unsure of the release date though. This may get delayed to next year or whatever. But yeah, another one that I thought I should mention.